Hello, my name is Cheryl Delk-LeGood. I'm the Executive Director for English USA, the Association of English Language Programs in the U.S., and you are listening to EdUp, Accelerated Excellence.
The EdUp Accelerated Excellence podcast is supported by the 2.0 conferences to be held in Las Vegas, April 7th through 9th, 2026. Business leaders, educators, healthcare experts, marketing and tech professionals, and founding entrepreneurs are welcome to take part. Reserve your space today and receive a 15% discount courtesy of EdUp Accelerated Excellence with the code EDUPXE15OFF. That's EDUPXE15OFF. Learn more and register online at the2conf.com. That's the2conf.com with the code EDUPXE15OFF.
Now is the time to earn your degree with Western Governors University. WGU is an online accredited university that specializes in personalized learning and making higher education accessible for as many people as possible. With courses available 24/7 and monthly start dates, you can earn your degree on your schedule. You may even be able to graduate sooner than you think by demonstrating mastery of the material you know. Make 2025 the year you focus on your future. Learn more at wgu.edu.
Leaving the vortex. My passion for you is no longer useful now that you know my potential to love you. I will not slip again into sadness. I will not write streams of consciousness that spiral my heart into the vortex. I am grateful for the vortex. It has served me well. It is now time to leave it behind and discover what beauty awaits. I am reading from Love from the Vortex and Other Poems by our next guest, Dr. Yolanda Sealey-Ruiz. Welcome to EdUp Accelerated Excellence, the podcast for the advancement of educational excellence and equity. And our guest today is the incomparable Yolanda Sealey-Ruiz, Dr. Sealey-Ruiz. She is a professor at Teachers College. She is an entrepreneur. She is someone who lifts the souls of others. She is a community organizer in that regard, I believe. And a really, really good spirit in the world. So, Dr. Sealey-Ruiz, will you please introduce yourself, giving voice to your name to the EdUp Accelerated Excellence community?
Yeah, first of all, Dr. Easley II, I am so happy to be here, and I love the way you roll those R's for Ruiz. So it's such a beautiful start. Exactly what you said. I am, especially now, trying to be a professor for the people. I am trying to keep my heart and my mind and my eye on exactly what's happening in education, particularly for children of color, and how do I bridge where I am in higher ed to high school or K through 12 communities. So that's what I want to be known for.
So it sounds like your work is steeped in community-based learning and situated learning, in a lot of regard, to some regard. You are known for your work that addresses the archeology of self. So I know you have a book coming out. We can talk about that. But for those who may not be familiar with the archeology of self as a framework, can you tell us how that came to be, what it means to you, and what is the framework?
Thank you for that. The framework came about rather organically, because if you look at the framework, first of all, although it's in the shape of a pyramid, it is not hierarchical. I'm still working on the design and trying to figure out what's the best design. What's important to know is that these are elements or components, I call them, that have been really laced throughout my teaching for the decades that I've been teaching, and also really represents the ethos of what I try to get new teachers to think about, to approach this field of education with humility, to constantly critically reflect, to know your history and the history of the young people you are teaching, to, of course, the foundation is to love your students, to have that type of love, a critical love, I'm calling, which is a profound and ethical commitment to your community. And to understand that the self is the tool to do all the work of love, reflection, history gathering, right?
Right.
And humility. And then the ultimate goal is interruption. So that's what's displayed in the framework. It's rooted in love, humility, reflection, knowing history, yours and those you're serving, seeing the self as the tool to do all of the work. So you must know yourself. And then interrupting racism, classism, sexism, homophobia, all of those isms and phobias that keep us from seeing other people as fully human. You must interrupt that, especially if you're an educator. It's an imperative, it's not an option.
So I think this is quite profound. And I want to hone in on preparation for teachers who may not look like or come from the communities of the students in which they serve.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work around the archaeology of self look like for those folks who are entering the profession, who are going to work in communities that are not their home base communities per se?
Right, and this is where those components come in, right, doctor? Meaning, if it's a different cultural background, neighborhood background, this is where the historical literacy comes in. What is the history of those students, those communities that you're serving? This is where humility comes in, particularly, let's say, if you are not Black, you are not Latina, you're white, let's say, you must be humble when you are approaching these amazing students, this incredible history, right? And
Right.
then it requires reflection. Once you are learning this, because you're not going to learn it in your teacher ed program. Look what's happening now with the erasure of books, trying to erase the people, erase history. We are already barely represented in the multiple and true histories that, let's say, Black and Brown people represent in the first place. So a teacher who's going into a community that's different from their background, they have to be very serious about digging deep and learning that history, reading those books, talking to those folks. And you must approach this history. And I'm going to say this is for teachers of color too, because we've not been taught our history. So you also have to build your historical literacy, and to do so with humility, to do so with a critical reflection. And my hope, of course, is as you learn more about the beauty of these students, you will love them.
Mm-hmm.
You will understand what your commitment is. So that's how all of the components really work together. And of course, archaeology of self. Who's doing the self work? Who's doing the work? You
Right.
are.
Self.
So that's why that self piece is very, very important, because where you are in terms of understanding your purpose, in terms of even understanding your life, will determine how deep you're willing to go to be the effective, loving, critical, reflective, humble teacher that you need to be, especially now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm going to shift
Oh,
a
you're
bit.
getting me started, brother. You're getting me started. Oh
That's
my
okay.
goodness, I'm so excited.
We're gonna keep you started, but I'm going to shift because I mean you're a dynamic individual, so you're an
Mhm.
educator, but your work also incorporates a joy for the arts. So in some words, you're a poetess, but
Mm.
this I did not know about you. I didn't know about your affinity for hip hop.
Ooh.
So if you could, you've referred to hip hop as the North Star of resilience.
Mm.
What does that mean, and how does
Oof.
it play out, just to keep you inspired for example?
First, I feel so blessed having been born uh, at a time of the hip hop movement. So literally, not just being physically born in the Bronx, a few blocks away from some of these amazing people, Grandmaster Flash, Easy AD and the Cold Crush Brothers,
Mm-hmm.
KRS-One, right?
Right.
Literally coming of age during this dynamic phenomenon. And it is the North Star because one thing about hip hop, it was a music of resilience and resistance.
Mm-hmm.
We were just young kids in the South Bronx. The Cross Bronx Expressway had ripped through our community a few decades before, which really created flight. It really created joblessness. It really decimated the Bronx in so many ways. Just literally creating that pathway to make a path for others to come in and out our community.
Right.
And so our music was a testimony that we are here, we are resisting, we're not taking this lying down. Our body movements, our clothing, graffiti, all of the elements of hip hop were the youth saying, I am here, we are here, and you cannot erase us. So for me, that's the ultimate testimony when we think about even today, trying to erase our books, trying to erase our history. Hip hop is a North Star because if you look at the hip hop movement, you will see it's a story of survival.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why it is so meaningful to me. I imagine if I grew up in Queens or Brooklyn or one of the other boroughs, being coming of age of that era, it would have still impacted me. But it impacts me so deeply because I was right there in the South Bronx, so close to it. It just shaped my life. I can't say enough about it. Wow.
When I was speaking with some of our students about you coming on the podcast, and I talked about, hip hop in general, because I said, I didn't really know that your affinity for hip hop, and I had to go through, some of the archives. The question they asked me then to pose to you is, what would be on your playlist, your hip hop playlist, that keeps you going? And if you could share 2 or 3 songs that are your go-to, that help to pull you out of the trenches, or maybe you're feeling as though something, life isn't going the way you want it to go. What do you turn to?
What a beautiful question. And brother, that's so easily answered. And I'll say this, in the new book, The Archeology of Self, the first chapter is called Growing Up Bronx, which is also the name of my poetry book that's coming out. And I talk about the Bronx being my first teacher of racial literacy. What I also have in the entire book for each chapter, including the first chapter, of course, is a playlist. There's a QR code that's going to lead everyone to like a playlist for the chapter. And so what people will find are songs from the Cold Crush Brothers. They will find songs from KRS-One. Contemporarily speaking, Kendrick Lamar does speak to me on so many levels, whether it's, his song Love, or We Gonna Be All Right, or of course, They Not Like Us. That we see that beyond the battle between he and Drake, that they Not Like Us could be for folks who are not from your area. It could be for folks who don't look like you, folks who don't share your ideology, right? So it's an anthem. So Kendrick is on my playlist now. KRS-One stays on my playlist. And there are other, of course, Talib Kweli. His father was my teacher at NYU. So when I write articles, when I write articles with Dr. Perry Green, you will always see lyrics from Talib Kweli. So when I'm feeling a certain way, I will say I go back to this song, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder why I keep from going under. The Message.
Right.
And I have taught the message. I've taught the message alongside gospel songs. I've taught the message alongside jazz songs. So that is a song I keep going back to for my own spiritual uplift. But also, much of that video was shot in my neighborhood. So
Oh,
it is
wow.
also a reminder, right, of how far God has brought me, but also the battle that still is today.
So let's continue this line of I'm hearing joy really, um,
Mm,
and through artistry and compassion. Um,
mm,
so this concept of love appears in your work, and particularly for urban education. You said so. This idea of centering the Bronx, from which one has come. How do you
mm.
define love in the context of teaching? And how do you encourage teachers to integrate love into their practice? I know you, archaeology yourself, you talked about how the framework can lead to love. Um,
Mm.
but how do you think it appears, and how do we help folks who are going into teaching to embrace this idea of love?
Beautiful question. Actually, the framework, brother, is rooted in love. And
Mm,
even though I said it's a pyramid, it is not hierarchical. Whatever shape the framework will end up being, love will be the center.
right,
It's a critical love. It's a profound and it's an ethical commitment for the communities that you're serving. So, first and foremost, I ask teachers, number one, why have you decided to become a teacher? Number
mhm,
two, why do you want to teach in the neighborhood that you want to teach in, wherever that is? Number three, what will prevent you from loving the students as though they were your own biological children or foster children you really desired to raise, or a cousin or a nephew or niece, right? So right away, I want to know what is would prevent you from loving them in the way that you would love a family member, right? That's usually where we start. And we also do I'm talking about assignments now. I'm getting into the nitty
right,
gritty, right, of how I encourage students in my classroom because it has to be beyond theory. We read a lot of theory. So, of
right,
course, Bell Hooks is all about love. Of course, Bell Hooks is teaching to transgress. Of course, it's the work of Sean Genwright, who writes about radical love. So that's sprinkled in my syllabi, but in terms of them doing the actual work, I have to do these what I call excavation exercises as they engage in the archaeology of self around, let's say, love, around humility. I make it very tangible.
right.
And so, what I would encourage them to think about is be honest. Do you feel loved?
Ooh,
Who's loved you?
oh, wow,
Write about that. Because if you felt love, if you've experienced love, brother, it's easier to give it.
right. And
So,
I'm sure you know this, having worked over the years with a lot of young folks who are coming into the profession. Um, Many people don't feel as though they have been fully loved.
mm-mm. And certainly not by schools, doctor, certainly not by schools. And if you're black and brown or poor, right? Let's say poor white, poor mixed, poor Asian, you've likely not been loved by schools either because the institution wasn't designed to love you. We have to go back to the original purpose of schools, particularly for students of color or poor immigrant students, was really to get them off the streets. Let's get these rugrats off the street, literally. That's how it was seen. And so you look at the work of course, the Hale House, Mother Hale for Black communities. You look at historical work, Jane Addams, Larry Cuban, right? They tell the story, particularly of immigrants coming and having to have to do something with those children so that they're not in the street begging, they're not committing crimes. Let's try to educate them,
Hmm.
right? And even if you look at the buildings look like factories, they look like institutions. They're not hospitable to the human spirit, right? So we have to really understand, well, what was the mission of education? And specifically for Black and Brown children, it's always been a battle for us to be educated.
Hmm.
Whether it's Plessy versus Ferguson, separate and we know very unequal, or the Civil Rights Act, all of this is why we have to know our history, right? Because in knowing the history, you know the battles, but you also know the victories. And it also gives you, I want to say, a blueprint, a black print, if you will, for where you
Right.
need to go. I don't know if I answered the question, brother. You got me so
Oh, you
inspired
did.
over
You
here.
did.
I'm just talking.
You did. So I'm going to tell you how I first came to connect with you. I I think I was at Strand Bookstore and I picked up a book. That book was Love from the Vortex, poetry, because I love poetry. Um,
Oh,
and so it has become a powerful tool for self-exploration and racial literacy. So how do you balance vulnerability in your own work of sharing your personal journey with the responsibility of educating others?
wow, brother. First of all, thank you. And I'm so grateful that Strand is one of my favorite bookstores. And the book is independently published. So the fact that it made its way to a Strand is a beautiful thing. And in terms of your question, vulnerability is
Yeah.
the work. Like when you ask me, how do you encourage, new teachers or even teachers that have been around a bit? I work with everyone. Uh, Clicking on that or tapping into that vulnerable gene or the gene of vulnerability, that is actually the work. And the gene of vulnerability also makes it easier to tap into the gene of humility and reflection and all those components that I mentioned. But brother, I cannot ask anyone to do something I'm not willing to do myself.
Oh, that's
I would
powerful.
I would be a phony, right? I'd be fake.
That's powerful.
Thank you for saying that.
It really
So
is.
it's
Yeah.
it's a modeling and it's also being authentic and real. I'm not going to ask you to practice humility and vulnerability. And I'm going to stand there and be a voyeur of your story and not tell you mine. It's not right.
Now is the time to earn your degree with Western Governors University. WGU is an online accredited university that specializes in personalized learning and making higher education accessible for as many people as possible. With courses available 24/7 and monthly start dates, you can earn your degree on your schedule. You may even be able to graduate sooner than you think by demonstrating mastery of the material you know. Make 2025 the year you focus on your future. Learn more at wgu.edu.
Thank you for listening to EdUp Accelerated Excellence. This episode is supported by the 2.0 conferences to be held in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA, April 7th through 9th, 2026. Business leaders, educators, healthcare experts, marketing and tech professionals, and founding entrepreneurs are welcome to take part. Reserve your space today and receive a 15% discount courtesy of EdUp Accelerated Excellence with the code EDUPXE15OFF. That's EdUPXE15OFF. Check out the details in the show notes or learn more and register online at the2conf.com. That's the2conf.com with the code EDUPXE15OFF.
Yeah, as you talked about love and humility, working with the work of those who are coming into the profession. I think that this idea of vulnerability helps you to be seen fully,
Mm.
or more. Is it more full or more fully?
Listen, brother, it's what you said. And it's more fully. And yeah,
I think it
absolutely.
does. Because it's you're a work in progress. So even as you're revealing
Mm.
yourself, we are, as you just asked, I hope I answered the question, right? But you may answer the question a bit differently 2 weeks from now in a different context
Come
because
on. Yes.
we evolve and the context changes. And so what's appropriate for that moment, I think is important. So
Oh,
here,
that's brilliant. Can I just say that that's brilliant
oh, thank
and
you.
that's
This is me reflecting.
profound? We're a mirror to each other. We are.
I love that.
Mm.
So this is something that you've done that folks would say, wow, what courage it takes. You left a successful corporate career to focus on education and really to inspire others. So what was the most challenging aspect of making that decision?
Brother, it's
And
certainly the core. Go
of the
ahead.
car, right? And while I'm thinking about it, let me add, and what was the most rewarding? So, what was the
Oh my.
most challenging about making that decision to give up all the trappings of what people say what success should look like, which is usually money and material goods, to go into education?
No, brother, that was it. You thought I said car, but I actually said the coins,
Oh,
the
coins.
cash.
I thought you said car.
Was the hardest thing. And again, I couldn't claim that it was archaeology of self then, but I've always been all my life doing self work around what is important, what is my purpose. And I knew that I had to make that major decision because while I was working in corporate America, I kept getting called to the classroom,
Mm.
which is why I was teaching at night. It's like I couldn't stay away. So I did it methodically, certainly thought it through, but it didn't matter if I waited 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, it would always be the money issue. So I had to say, can this be a time that I can do this? And it was. I was younger. I was newly married. My husband was working in the post office. So he had a very stable job. For
Right.
many of us, we went for that. That was a stable job. And I said, now is the time. If I don't do it now, it's going to become more difficult, in part because I was on a trajectory in corporate. My next move would have been vice president somewhere. It would have been perhaps CEO somewhere. So I think I shifted at just the right time. And you tend to see people of my age group, they're either really high in an organization, or they have a doctorate, or they have their own business or something. So I think I took that shift at just the right moment of what they call the fork in the road and dedicated the rest of my life to education. But I had been teaching at night already.
It's almost
It was
like
just, mhm.
it's like the folks who work during the day and go to night school, but you were working during the day and going to night school as an instructor.
Literally. And even I started working at the college level at night. Again, brother, it kept calling me. The classroom kept calling me. I could not resist. And it got to a point I said, am I going to do this or am I going to do this?
Mm.
Because I knew that I wanted to get the PhD before I even knew what the letters meant. When I was 13, I saw this beautiful Black woman on television. She sounded really smart. Clearly now she was an expert, as we would call. And she had these 3 letters behind her name. And I remember saying out loud, my mother was in the room. I said, I want to be like her. I want to get what she has. Brother, it was that simple.
Do you remember who she was?
No, I don't. She was just a beautiful face. I wish I could. I would have looked her up by now to tell her the inspiration. But I knew in that moment it was going to happen. That was 13. So look, it took a few decades. The moral of the story is don't give up on your dreams, and what's for you will find you, even if you're afraid.
I like that. It almost torments you, right?
Ooh, it'll haunt you.
Particularly if you're afraid of a calling, it does feel like it's tormenting you. And it's the fear of giving up something in order to move in a new direction.
Oh.
So
wow.
So, listen, I think you've married what you've learned in the corporate world, because you have an LLC, Arc of Self. And that's, I think, in some ways helps to organize your creative ventures. So blending entrepreneurialism and education. What advice would you give to educators who are looking to expand their impact, perhaps beyond the classroom or beyond the school?
No, absolutely. Go for it and do it. It's now an S Corp. S Corp is a little bit more tax advantaged than an LLC. But I think what I want to share most is to be authentic to the self. Because when you do that, it will make an easier transition. It is not easy to open a business at all, right? But it will make an easier transition because you will be doing what you love. You will be doing what your heart is vested in. And now, yes, you're opening the door to monetize it a little bit more, but that should not be the reason that you do it. I'll tell you the reason that I started Arc of Self was a way to have a way for people to understand on the business side, because I come from business. I also still do this work with business. So that was my primary. I wasn't thinking about the academy because I have my teaching. Sometimes we get invitations for keynotes. All that stuff was fine. This was really thinking, how do I take what my research is and put it in such a way that businesses will understand what I can offer them? So that's the name Arc of Self, which is a reflection of my archaeology of self research, the work that I do for my own life, what I'm inviting people into. So that's really the name of the business. And what having the S Corps has allowed me to do is to reach broader audiences, like businesses, like nonprofits, and not just speak to each other in the academy. While it is important, because we're lifting each other's research up, we're learning from each other, but I've always wanted my work to go beyond an article or a book. For me, the practice is what's most important, even more important than the theory. And we know theory is important because Bell Hooks even said, I turned to theory because I was hurting. So I needed, Black feminist thought, it's a healing. But for me, it has to be both. And that's where that opening up that S Corps, the business, allowed me to certainly bridge theory and practice, but offer it to a broader audience.
Yeah. So I think also it's important for folks who are listening to know that and I'm going to, by all measures, you've been a success in this work, but success doesn't happen overnight.
Mm-mm.
So I'm going to sort of bridge two concepts, that 13-year-old self, but also to other 13-year-olds in the Bronx and other places. And you can speak to the young ladies. Thinking about the process, what would you now say back to a 13-year-old who might be listening to you on this podcast or listening to another PhD on television or radio about the process of how success then is built over time?
Can I just say that you're a brilliant interviewer? These questions are their own form of archaeology of self for me. I just want to let you know how much I appreciate the way your brain works and how you're able to really reach into points of my life and ask questions that I'm hoping the answers will be meaningful to someone beyond me. I hope these answers will help the listeners. So I just wanted to say that to you and give you those flowers in this moment because you are brilliant.
We receive it. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. In terms of the 13-year-old girl or boy, but my little sisters,
Okay.
especially now I'm doing work with my sister's keeper. I've been doing work with my brother's keeper for the past 7 years. And now I'm beginning to do work with my sister's keeper. The first thing I'm saying is, hello, beautiful. Hello, beautiful. Find a place to write down your dreams. Even if there's no one around to listen to you, get a little book, a little notebook, gather some papers, write down your dreams. Revisit those pages over and over as you get older, especially during difficult moments when you want to give up. That's the first thing I would say, because for me, writing has always been central to being a dream keeper for me. The second thing I would say is know that there is a deeper world beyond social media. And often what you're looking at is not always real. It's often manufactured to make you feel like you're not enough. So I want to remind you that you are enough, that you're actually more than enough because it's in your DNA, it's in your ancestry. And in time, you will come to understand that. So the third thing I would say is be patient and know that as you get older, things will come to be more clear to you than they are now when you're 9 or 10 or 11. I think the fourth thing I would say is keep your eyes open to look for reflections of who you want to be in the future. Take a look at other women, men. It doesn't matter the sexuality. If you see something in someone and you think, wow, that can be me, then learn more about them and begin to shape who you wish to become. Because the last thing is, number 5, you have agency and you have power. Lean into it and lean into it early.
So when you started responding, you probably saw me shaking my head. I had a moment because I internalized that, I interpreted that first point, number one of what are your dreams is giving folks permission, although they don't need it, but some people may not know that they can dream.
Mm.
And so I working with some international researchers in childcare. Most places call it childcare. We say early childhood here in the States.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that some children don't know what play is, the way we understand play. So this idea of giving someone permission to dream is so powerful. So I really appreciate that. Now, I want you to, if you could, just share a bit more about the book that's coming out, and your other projects. How can folks, what can they look for from you, and how might they engage with you in the next, 6 months or a year? So what's down the road?
Oh, thank you for that. What's down the road is more of my understanding of the self and my love for education and my desire for teachers to understand themselves, right? So you see the meshing. And
Right.
that is coming out in a book that's titled Archeology of Self, The Introspective Educator's Guide to Racial Literacy. It has been such a beautiful journey because I feel like it's been certainly the last 13 years in the making, right? As long as I've been thinking about racial literacy and archeology of self. It is also partly autobiographical. The first chapter being called Growing Up Bronx and
Mhm.
showing how the Bronx, hip hop, my neighborhood was my first teacher. We say how our parents are our first teacher.
Right.
Absolutely, they are. But our hoods, our neighborhoods are deeply our first teachers. Growing Up Bronx is also the title of the other project that I just finished that I'm hoping will find a publishing home. And that is a young adult novel in verse called Growing Up Bronx, where the narrator, the protagonist, is 9-year-old Lolo, which is a variation of my nickname, and really taking the reader through Lolo's journey through the Bronx of finding love, desiring love, being loved by her community, and all the things that happened. A crack epidemic, presidents visiting the Bronx,
Mm-hmm.
the Bronx burning,
Yep.
about a decade. Landlords set those places on fire, collected insurance checks, and left the ruins for us and those
Right.
playgrounds. What does it mean, right, to grow up in that environment and still love yourself and still be part of a historical movement of people that created something like hip hop, which is
Right.
a global world phenomenon? So Lolo, in her way of 9, and I think at this point, at 16 is when the book ends. How does she tell that story? So that's coming up. I'm also working on an Archeology of Self playbook. I talk a lot about theory and practice.
Right.
Playbook through quotes from Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, Rumi, Langston Hughes, some of my favorite thinkers and poets, choosing quotes from them that resonate with the components of the Archeology of Self framework. So what does Maya Angelou have to say about critical humility? What does Rumi have to say about love? And so I pull these quotes out and then I offer some questions for mostly teachers, but anyone can access the book. Just personal questions to journal about. It's a playbook. Play with these components. Play with the concept of love, humility. So that's what's coming out. What has recently come out in Testimony to Love and Bell Hooks is a co-edited book with Dr. Autumn Griffin called All About Black Girl Love in Education, the pedagogies of love and bell hooks. And the beauty of that book, brother, I just want to say quickly, is number one, Dr. Autumn Griffin took the lead. And the concept of the book is intergenerational, for senior scholars and junior scholars to write together about Black girlhood. And of course, by extension, girls of color. And that's what's in the book. It's artwork, it's poetry, it's personal story, it's scholarly articles.
paired up junior, senior scholars within the 6 frameworks that Bell Hooks offers in her book, All About Love. It was a joy to do that work.
I love it. I hear the joy in your voice. So I feel uplifted. I'm so inspired right now.
Yes.
So I do. I'm gonna close this segment, but I think I will have a couple of questions for sort of a postscript. So thank you for this time to learn with and from you here at EdUp Accelerated Excellence.
Yes, my honor.
A special thanks to our research assistant, Emily Bloom, a recent graduate of Fordham University's Mental Health Counseling Program. Congratulations, Emily! And we want to hear from you. If you have feedback on this or other episodes, or would like to nominate a guest, contact us online at edupxe.com. That's edupxe.com.
Thank you for engaging with EdUp Accelerated Excellence, a member of the EdUp Experience Network of educational podcasts. You can find this and other episodes on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Radio, and other outlets where you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like this episode, don't forget to follow us and share within your network. To leave a comment or suggest a guest, contact us online at edupxe.com.